Yatsura 2, Beautiful Dreamer. Considering how Ataru and Lum are both prominent pop culture figures with a long and strong history in Japanese media, it's probably best that I should expand my anime knowledge and get to know these characters. Because to be honest, I'm coming into this completely fresh, and this will be my first experience with the franchise. Prior to watching this, the imagery of Lum looks familiar, as that comes up during discussions about anime from time to time, but I've never seen any of the episodes of the series or its 2022 reboot, the movies, the OVA, or read any of the manga. In fact, the reason why I'm checking this out in the first place is because this was requested to me by a fan on Patreon, and they specifically asked me to watch the second film because, according to them, this can serve as a gateway to the franchise. The one you can present to newcomers to give them a general idea of what Urusei Yatsura is all about without requiring to binge hours upon hours worth of episodes just to know what the fridge is going on. By the way, they also requested me to watch the Japanese sub of the film, just to give you some context of what I watched here. So overall, like I said before, this is just a big way of saying that this review will be from the perspective of a newcomer to Urusei Yatsura. And now that I'm about to have my first taste of Rumiko Takahashi's creation, did this movie really put in the beautiful in Beautiful Dreamer? Or will I be questioning its reality during the whole time? Let's find out. The story. As I started to work on this review,
Hold it! Sorry to interrupt this, folks, but I just want to give you a little bit of an update on what's going to be going on with this particular Animats Classic Reviews. Now, the thing is, we are going to be looking into a Japanese animated feature. And as such, I'm mostly going to be presenting images as part of the visuals of this review. And that's going to be like the majority of it, by the way. There will be some clips that will be popping up here and there, but for the most part, what you will be visually seeing throughout this review is just going to be images from the movie itself. And the reason why I am doing this, well, like I said, this is a Japanese animated feature. And if you don't know, it's usually with Japan media that they can be the most strict on YouTube. Like, one false move and then suddenly you'll get a copyright strike. So I'm just doing this for the sake of protecting my channel. Now, if you want to go and check out the original review with the clips intact, like my original vision of how the review should be, then I'm going to be making it a Patreon exclusive. So if you want to go and check that out, then all you have to do is join my Patreon at patreon.com/animat. Anyways, sorry to go and interrupt. Just thought I'd go and give you a heads up on how things are going to be with this review in particular. So, with all that said, let's get back to go and talk about Urusei Yatsura 2, Beautiful Dreamer.
I noticed that there was a familiar name who was credited as both the director and writer of the picture, and that was Mamoru Oshii, the acclaimed Japanese filmmaker behind Ghost in the Shell, and whose works inspired several big-name Hollywood directors like the Wachowski sisters and Christopher Nolan. In fact, Oshii got his first big break when he worked on Urusei Yatsura at Studio Pierrot as a storyboard artist and director, even taking the helm on the first two films, Only You and Beautiful Dreamer, which the latter was his final project with the franchise. However, as the feature began, it doesn't immediately feel like a Mamoru Oshii film, as everyone in Tomobiki High was chaotically running around to prepare the Student Cultural Festival, and many were dressed up as pop culture references, while the main characters were decorating their classroom as a literal Nazi bar, complete with a fully functioning tank in the room. Is this a thing in the show? Because, I have some serious concerns. But as the movie progresses, that familiar Oshii style gradually emerges as the feature becomes weirder and the tone gets more inconsistent as the film can get easily distracted. But eventually, Everything becomes clear when it reveals that the theme of the feature is all about dreams.
生地客観的な時間やら空間やら考えるさかい、ややこしいことになるんちゃいまっか。
In a way, yes. This is actually one of those it was all just a dream movies. And while this would usually result in the audience to participate in synchronized table flipping, this was where people got their first taste of Oshii's signature filmmaking, as he approached the subject in a deeper and more philosophical way. The best way to describe the storytelling of Beautiful Dreamer is that it acts like a simulation of being in a dream. It begins casually, where everything seems ordinary. Then a little afterwards, we start to see some unnatural things happening around us, such as a series of deja vu where we enter in a time loop and notice that the days are literally repeating. And as things get more surrealistic, you still try to go with the flow as if the anomaly is just part of life that we can only accept. But then you come to the realization that you're in a dream, and that's when the chaos is unleashed until you finally wake up.
アンさん、まだ次の準備ができとらんのに出てきたらあかんやんけ。このダボ。
It is a slow build-up to revealing that the characters are in a dream world. In fact, it doesn't get to that point until the third act, and I'll admit that prior to it, I was mostly confused as to what was going on or which direction it was going. It wasn't until I thought about it after finishing the feature that I realized that the way the movie was structured was honestly genius. They're quite subtle, but throughout the film, there are clues that were occasionally placed to hint about what was actually going on, who's behind it, and the motives to make it all happen. And on top of that, even when it can feel like the narrative has flaws and can be inconsistent, they were actually done on purpose to authenticate the feeling of being in a dream, along with being self-aware when some things don't make sense, like how Ataru's place is the only functioning house while the rest of the city is in complete ruins and everyone is gone, a corner store never running out of food and supplies, or even smaller details that add to the mystery of the situation.
見たかあの刀。昼間折ったはずなのにまた生えとる。
トカゲの尻尾じゃな。
まるで。
I'll say now that this is the kind of movie that's worth watching twice. Once to have that first experience, and another to see it with the full context that the characters are stuck in a dream. It may not look like it at first, but everything has a connection in order to have the viewer question what is reality at the same time as the characters are in the film. Do we choose what is real or fantasy, or are we just a figment of someone else's imagination?
まあね、夢やったら現実やったら言うて、所詮は考え方一つじゃ。
It may not seem like it at first due to the imagery of Urusei Yatsura, but this movie set aside the franchise's standard to allow Oshii to have creative freedom of building what later became his signature style, where diving deep into thought-provoking philosophies takes center stage while an epic anime is happening around that. And in the case of Beautiful Dreamer, it successfully brings the audience into a dream to keep them guessing about what is reality. Some anime fans came in to see Ataru and Lum's hijinks, but the story of their second film gave them so much more to think about. The animation. When looking back at Mamoru Oshii's movies like Ghost in the Shell or Angel's Egg, a part of what made them considered as masterpieces is how the animation makes them beautiful to watch with intricate complexity, a smooth flow, and fascinating designs that transport us to these different worlds to ask us questions about life. In Beautiful Dreamer, however, I did not get to see that sense of visual wonder. Of course, this is not to say that this looks all around bad, and I am aware that this is not Oshii's fault, since it is from the same studio that created the series. It's just that it is important to remember that this is a movie based on an anime in the 1980s, and as such, it will have more limitations to what they could visually accomplish compared to other Japanese animated features at the time like Angel's Egg and Nausicaa. As much as this is a movie about dreams and one of the protagonists is a magical alien girl, It's only during the climax where it decides to go all out as much as it can to jump from dream to dream and have the tone to be in the level of expect the unexpected.
なあ、あの野郎。ボケ！小細工しやがって、俺は必ず現実へ帰るぞ！
Yes, it's true that some of it is because of the story building up to the reveal that the cast is in a dreamland. To its credit, there were a few instances prior where it had a burst of imagination. But since this already established that this is more of a fantasy picture, especially with Lum flying around and shocking people prior to all the dream scenarios happening, it doesn't make the most out of its own concepts compared to other films that have a similar premise like Satoshi Kon's Paprika. Also, as it is an Urusei Yatsura movie, on top of the characters generally having more limited animation where they use dynamic poses to compensate for not moving as much, their designs are meant to be more comedic to get some funny reactions out of them. I get that this is mainly from the show, but considering that the movie's narrative took a completely different direction and the comedy was mostly sidelined, it makes the visual style look a bit out of place compared to what the movie was trying to establish. At the risk of putting out a hot take, I'd argue that this movie would have benefited from having a redesign and give the characters an updated look that's a bit more serious to fit with the film's general tone.
なるほど、そういうことか。
But again, let me clarify that this doesn't make the animation in general bad. I only wanted to point out what I believe what was visually holding the movie back compared to Oshii's later films. Despite its less than stellar aspects, the animation is still capable of presenting some strong moments. What I think it excels at is with the cinematography, where the camera angles really help to enhance the mood of the scenes, along with presenting the surreal nature of their transforming environments that can feel massive and really emphasize how they can feel like the only people alive in this world. And when the fantasy does come forward to emphasize that this is a dream, that's when the movie has fun with the creativity by delivering some of the feature's most memorable scenes. While most can be found during the climax, one great highlight is where the characters go in the high school at night and find themselves trapped in a series of optical illusions, providing a big clue after the time loop that they are in a completely different realm of reality. I understand that the movie's main priority is exploring the concepts of dreams and how they manipulate our perspective of what's real than actually exploring those said dreams. With that said, there is a slight disappointment that it doesn't feel like it visually made the most out of its own potential. Rather it be due to sticking to a story with its slow build-up or the limitations of the series style, one criticism I give to this is that it could have used more of that fantasy to add some extra spice to the picture. Because when it does, that's when the animation is at its most dynamic, creative, and strongest to make this a visual wonder that is as fascinating as discussing about dreams. It's on the weaker end by Oshii standards, but for Urusei Yatsura, it can be impressive to watch. The characters. As the fan mentioned before, Beautiful Dreamer does not require you to be familiar with the cast or the series prior to watching this. Even newcomers like me could step in and get a general idea of who these characters are without feeling lost due to the lack of context needed for the full understanding of the movie's events. And to give them credit, they are correct on that. Nowhere from my experience did I feel like I was out of the loop because I didn't know who these characters were beforehand, so it does earn points for being inviting to non-fans. However, this element is a unique double-edged sword. Yes, it's helpful that it doesn't require you to watch many episodes of the show to fully experience the feature, but the big catch is that the personalities didn't leave much of an impact here. Because the film's main priority is the concept of dreams and how we feel in them, the characters don't have room to make their individual qualities matter. At the most, they serve as avatars so that the audience can feel like they're in the shoes of the cast as they navigate around this strange dream world and figure out what is happening. Sure, they do have a moment to present their personalities and quirks, especially to integrate the series' comedy onto the picture, but you only get a small taste of those traits, leading to the characters to come off as one-dimensional in this. Not to mention that the humor is not among the feature's strongest elements, especially when the punchline often consists of some of the guys being horny.
もうあれだなこれね
As we look into the people who are trapped in this literal dreamscape, Ataru may be the main character of the series, but I don't think I could say the same about his role in Beautiful Dreamer. It's like the movie forgot to have him be the lead until the reveal that they're all in a dream and have him go through the climax. Other than that, he's the horny teenager whom, despite being with Lum, is always looking for a chance to get his way with any girl he could find.
じゃあその通り引き乗ろうか
Speaking of Lum, she does have a more significant role in the film where, without spoiling too much, the dreams that the characters find themselves in have a connection with her. And it has nothing to do with her supernatural origins, abilities, or that baby alien named 10 that I first thought is her son, but he turns out to be her little cousin who tags along in the group's adventures. In the movie's context, those are more like coincidences that she can do that. But during the film, she's the happy-go-lucky girl who is madly in love with Ataru and just wants to have a fun life with him and his friends.
この世界どう思います？
とっても楽しいっちゃ。じゃあね。
And around them are Mendo, the more disciplined and rich kid with little patience for the shenanigans of his peers who is alongside his feisty possible girlfriend, Shinobu.
しかしいい夢だったな。己のくだらん夢に人を巻き込むな。ごめんよ。
And the four guys who are referred to as Lum's stormtroopers, Megane, Perm, Kakugari, and Chibi, who are more like the comic reliefs that always work together in a dysfunctional way, with Megane acting like their leader. However, based on my research, he might be the reason why the team started the movie by making the Nazi bar. Again, I'm new to Urusei Yatsura, but why do these characters have this major walking red flag around?
How do I look, yellow man?
You look like you're about to tell your friend not to come to school tomorrow, man.
But then you have Sakura, who I consider to be the movie's protagonist more than Ataru. Throughout the picture, while she's the temperamental school nurse that hangs out with the girls, her role is like the film's detective who's the most serious in trying to figure out what's been causing these unusual events, and has a more spiritual side that gives her the advantage of having great knowledge on spirits and demons.
根拠だと全国10万の巫女筆記悪霊大百科にもしっかりそう書いてあるわ
Since this movie went more in its own direction than doing the typical things of the series, the roles of the characters depend on how much they matter to the subject of dreams. The more they're connected or play a significant part, the more value they deliver to the film. But the ones that don't offer much, on the other hand, don't feel necessary other than to justify this being an Urusei Yatsura movie and provide the comedy that, at best, can be hit and miss. Maybe their personalities shine brighter and have more significance in the series and the other movies, but in their second film, most of the characters are not what makes this dream memorable. I wouldn't say that this immediately turned me into an Urusei Yatsura fan and want to invest myself into more of Ataru and Lum's adventures, but it did give me more appreciation for the director and his filmmaking style. Urusei Yatsura 2, Beautiful Dreamer, is a fascinating example of Mamoru Oshii's early works, and a captivating animated feature that shows how he started his philosophical approach to storytelling. While the animation and a good amount of the characters aren't as impressive as Oshii's later works, since they're taken directly from the series, The story and its deep analysis on dreams and the concepts of reality are what make the movie both engaging and thought-provoking, where the closer you look at how it was structured and what it wants to say, the better it is to admire its craftsmanship. Like I said, this is a movie that's worth watching twice to get a clearer understanding. And I am aware that this is often considered as a must-watch for Urusei Yatsura fans and anime fans in general. However, I also personally recommend this to major movie buffs because this is another great example of Mamoru Oshii's influence in cinema, and how films like this and Ghost in the Shell played a part in inspiring some of Hollywood's biggest blockbusters. And if this review inspired you, then give this a like and come subscribe to my channel. You could join me in the dream of exploring more animated features from around the world. It brought Urusei Yatsura in a controversially different direction, but it was an important step for Mamoru Oshii to find his unique voice and go on to become one of the most influential names in anime. And it's all thanks to an alien girl and a dream.
Hey guys, this is Animad, and I want to start things off by giving out a huge thanks to Miss Spark, whose amazing support on Patreon allowed her to get some amazing rewards, including this one, where she got to ask me to review Urusei Yatsura 2, Beautiful Dreamer. And what a fascinating piece of anime history that I went and watched. It was very interesting, not just to get a little bit of a basic idea of what Urusei Yatsura is about, but primarily to go and check out the works of Mamoru Oshii, or more of the works of Mamoru Oshii, and how he started to go and develop what is now his signature style. But what is also very fascinating about that is how when the movie was first released, believe it or not, it was not really well liked, especially amongst fans. Back when it was first released, you gotta keep in mind, this was way before Mamoru Oshii made a name for himself. And it was way before anybody was actually familiar with the style of philosophical filmmaking or philosophical storytelling that he would go and do. So it was an extremely bold move of him to start experimenting that on a popular franchise with an already established tone that is completely different compared to what he wanted to go and do. So when fans went to go and check the movie out back in 1984, oh boy, there was quite the controversy going on. And at best, the reactions were very mixed, because there were actually some fans that were massively upset that they went away from the regular tone or more of the comedy from Urusei Yatsura, and instead, a lot of that has just been sidelined in favor of this experimental philosophical filmmaking, down to the point where even Oshii himself actually got threats from fans. However, there is a happy ending to it, of course, where over time, as Mamoru Oshii went on to go and make more stuff like Ghost in the Shell and became extremely influential both in the anime industry and in Hollywood as well, people then decided to go and give Urusei Yatsura 2 Beautiful Dreamer a second chance. And now with the new perspective and now being a lot more familiar with what Mamoru Oshii has done, it has gotten a lot more praise nowadays. It is a lot more respected and it's a lot more admired, down to the point where now some people would go and say that it's one of the greatest animes of all time, or one of the greatest Japanese animated features of all time. And honestly, I do understand it. I mean, you saw what I talked about in my review. You've listened to my thoughts about it. It definitely is great. Now, I do have my criticisms, of course, but whatever works in here, it is absolutely brilliant. And you could see where Mamoru Oshii started to really develop his style, his philosophical storytelling, like I said before. So overall, this turned out to be quite a great experience, and I'm really happy that I went to go and watch this movie and even got to talk about it in this review. All right, now with that said and done, it is now time that we shall go and move on to the animation hat. But before I go and select the next review, or just pick whatever comes up, if you would like to be like Miss Spark and you want to go and support my work and get a bunch of rewards, including but not limited to seeing my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animact. But at the same time, if you would like to suggest an animated film you would like me to review and that I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is go to write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. All right, so now let's go and see what our next review is going to be. I don't know, I kind of feel, okay, yeah, it's not just me. I kind of feel like there are some that are just popping out of the hat. Okay, I got one now. Anyways, I'll clean that up a little later. So the next one shall be, okay. Well, okay, this is going to be an interesting one, I gotta say. I mean, well, as I am recording this, the holidays have way passed, but you know what? This will be an interesting look, I gotta say. I mean, on one hand, it's a little bit disappointing that I'm not going to be reviewing the original of it, considering that it's one of the most beloved Disney movies out there. But we might as well go and check out another project that came out of this. I've already done a review a while back of one of its direct-to-video spin-off sequels, but now we're going to go into the other one, where now we're going to get back into that holiday spirit with them.
あの人らと付き合うのは並大抵のことやおまへんで。行こうか。